Hello, everybody. This is Justin Case of American Newscape, rejoining our friend, cousin Scott Dudley for American Consciousness. Hello, Scott. Welcome back to American Newscape.
Justin, it's great to be here. Good to be with you. Good to be with our listeners. Good to be back. I haven't heard from our sponsors yet, so I didn't receive any free beverages. So what I've done is I've gone full stealth. So there is no branding here. Nobody can see what I'm using to keep my throat monitored, and then I'm waiting for the other people to come and offer to kind of what's it called when they sponsor us, but it's bigger than that, like synchronization. No.
No. Well, I think sponsor, you can have like title sponsors. They could be American Consciousness via Sears and Roebuck. They probably are looking to sponsor somebody.
They probably in their death throes are looking to do everything they can. Back in the days, remember? I mean, it used to. I'm Montgomery Ward's came
Oh,
on.
yeah.
The world has changed.
Yeah, I used to love Montgomery Ward's auto mechanics because they always made it right. Rarely fixed it, but always made it right.
Yeah, I did too. I actually went to them for service. So I miss them too. All right, so let's do a topic today. This is an interesting topic, and I want to give full credit. The inspiration for this came from a single throwaway sentence in a newly released book that I'm reading. The book is by a guy named Richard Powers, and he is a Pulitzer Prize winning fiction author who I fell in love with maybe 15 years ago. I read Galatia 2.2, which was a story about an artificial intelligence that had realized it was alive and then had gone into this existential spiral. And it was such a good book. And I was like, this guy's got such a way of capturing people and capturing the computer, I guess, that I started reading all of his books. And every 2-3 years or so, he comes up with a brilliant book. The latest one is called Playground. And if Richard, if you're listening right now to the podcast, shout us out in the comments or something, because we love you. You could love us too. Interesting thing was I posted this on social media, right? I was like, I'm reading this book. I love it. Everything's really cool. And one of my friends on social media said, oh, I went to junior high with this guy. We're still friends. I'm going to go see him in a couple of weeks. I was like, wow, small world.
Well, it is. It is a small world, and I'm so out of the loop. I didn't even realize fiction writers could win Pulitzer Prizes.
He is a Pulitzer Prize winning fiction author. Yes.
Wow.
And does really interesting topics and does them fairly complexly with an ensemble cast of multiple characters, which I guess is probably why I like reading them, because it's like you're not just living and dying with one person in the story. There's like 5 people in the story, and you can pick whoever you want to kind of tag along and say, this one's a little bit like me.
All right.
Here's your throwaway sentence. The throwaway sentence was that he basically said something to the effect of, growing up in Chicago taught this person how to love the suffering of crushed hopes. And they were referring to the Chicago Cubs. And I grew up in the Midwest, so I totally rang a bell with me, because I remember the long-suffering Cubs fans who back from Ernie Banks, every year they would be like living and dying with their team. And every year their team would crush their hopes and fail to perform.
Having been a Cubs fan since I was 6 years old, because they were my babysitter when I got shipped back to Iowa for a couple weeks on TV.
Yeah.
It's a lot more, I appreciate your author. The myth and the romance with the Chicago Cubs is a lot deeper than just a baseball team. And so shame on him for not recognize that, but it can be crushed hopes. I mean, my grandmother loved them with a passion, and she would always say they wouldn't be the Cubs if they didn't break your heart.
Exactly. Well, and and it's funny. This is a hard topic for people because I guess there's a certain kind of survival rational urge thing that says, I can't admit to loving or liking having my hopes crushed because that's such a like a non-capitalist way of being or something. And it's like, where's the payoff in that? And that's really what we can talk about today, because there must be a payoff, because as you start looking around your own personal life, you start seeing example after example after example of I am willingly taking on this relationship, knowing that at the end of the day, it's going to crush me. It's going to crush my hopes. It's going to crush it's going to leave me devastated. And yet I want to do it, and yet I love to do it. But I can't admit it to myself, which that's what makes it fascinating to me.
Well, that's the sad part of it. People need to own their feelings and not be afraid of them. And people need to live in the moment. I mean, let's not embark in a relationship and first day develop an exit strategy so I won't get hurt.
And that's a really good point, because it's harder for the moment to crush your hopes, because you really haven't had, if you're living in the moment, then you didn't spend 10 moments ago
Right.
building up some sort of expectation for right now, right?
Right.
You're hanging out with right now, and you don't have a lot of expectations, and so you're not putting yourself in this position. Yet we do. So let me start with an obvious one, and this is something that you may or may not. This is why I'm curious. So I love bringing these to you, because you've thought it out, whether you thought it out or thought about thinking it out. You've always got something there, which is kind of like me. It's like I'm always ticking.
Right.
So religion is a fascinating example of something that we want to put all of our beliefs in. We want to totally dedicate ourselves to, and yet the Catholic religion even has like a saint of hopeless causes. Saint Jude is like hanging out there going, yeah, if you've got a hopeless cause, just hit me up on, text me, and I'll, write it down on the list of stuff. Religion's tricky because if you look at what it promises, what's on the table, it's not the National League Central Championship like the Cubs are going through. It's like there's a pretty high list of stuff that religious is hold, heaven and a joyful, happy life, and religious is kind of like a saying: if you jump on board this and you do it right, and you're nice and disciplined in the practice, this stuff awaits you. And I look at this and I'm like, well, indeed, that may be true. But there are 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 100 major religions. There are 600 flavors of Christianity. 600 flavors of Christianity. And there are some inherent conflicts. So even if you pick a religion, like I'm going to do this one, because religions don't want you like slopping out, right? They don't want you mixing and mashing. You're buying into something that has a fairly low probability payoff, and you're going to get your hopes crushed. I mean, I haven't gotten texts from any dead people in heaven saying, dude, it is awesome up here. It's like a cruise ship, only better.
Well, you may not be paying attention. Uh,
Well, I didn't block them on my text message, so they could hit me up.
there's a beautiful thing about religion that thee of little faith have trouble understanding, and most religions have it. It's called fellowship. It becomes a social event, and it was a social event back when the Catholics had the Inquisition going on. Pity the fool that wasn't part of the Catholic religion or
Like
had
a
a,
marshmallow roast, only like
yeah,
some lady.
yeah, and I think a lot of people find comfort in that fellowship. And I've always looked at religion. If you find comfort in your religion, whatever it is, then it may be a very good thing for you. Now, if you're a knight and you're being sent on a holy war, the Crusades, because somebody's telling you that your God wants you to go kill.
Your free ticket to heaven is in warrior sacrifice.
Right, and that's then I think it steps its bound. It's like the current holy wars that are going on. I feel sorry for somebody trapped in a religion whose God thinks they're it in a bag of chips, and hell with everybody else. And I think all religions are guilty of that at some level from time to time.
I think they have to watch themselves. So, but what you're saying, it's a baby in a bathwater thing, right?
Yep.
It's like there may be some flaws in buying into the hopes of some religious evolution, but there are certainly benefits to buying into the fellowship, to buying into the community, to even to buying into kind of the general vibe of good acts and good people.
Well, I agree. I've been invited to when we moved here, Christ Community Church had lots of clients and friends that were members there, and they would invite me to the big events, and I enjoyed those events for entertainment purposes, as I can enjoy a sermon as entertainment and not have to bite the hook or take the bait to enjoy it.
Nice. And to me that seems like a really fair bound. So at the end of the day, Justin, you're not going to get crushed by your by religion. You haven't
Right.
swallowed the hook or drank as much Kool-Aid as you need to.
No, I have no expectations. A safety net in life is if you don't have expectations, then you won't be disappointed.
Oh, I agree. I agree, and I think that's a real winner in terms of happiness.
Right. Right. But recognize, that there's a lot of, and you're certainly not in this group, there's a lot of people that believe, let's just say, fellowship in a certain religion, you know, demonizes the people that are necessarily there. And that is so far from the truth, or it's not justified, because people are there for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, yes, I agree, and sorting those out is interesting. One of the things I find interesting is prayer, because prayer can have that element of putting your hopes on something that are almost guaranteed to get crushed. And let me throw out the example is the Janet Joplin song, right? It's like, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? How many people get Mercedes Benz who pray for them? I don't know. I've never ran across that person. But the tricky thing to me, the cool thing to me, are the people who say, "Well, I got this because I'm going to pray, Thy will be done. I'm just going to pray for the universe to do whatever it was going to do, and then whatever happens, I can say, look, my prayer's being answered. See, told you."
Absolutely. Their
Clever, huh?
expectations were met. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just like Miss America. She wants world peace. If she wants to win, she's going to get up there and say she wants world peace. And I don't believe anybody with a semblance of intelligence believes world peace is something that can be attained.
If you buying into the hope of world peace is going to get your hopes crushed. I mean, you know, let's touch the third rail for just a quick second here. Politics. You know, Obama ran on hope, and he got elected on hope, and then he proceeded to do like everything he needed to do to get reelected, which means going to the right of whatever he said he was going to do. And so we got, you know, policed up, and we got militaried up, and we got tougher on people trying to cross the border, because those were all the things he needed to get the second term. And so all the people who were sitting around in Team Hope were going, you know, what about universal health care? What about, you know, these are the things they were hoping for. And that is the tradition of politics from day one. You know,
Well,
people who buy into politics, in my opinion, are really setting themselves up for crushed hopes. And there are people who every single election cycle dive right back in.
Well, if we touch on Obama and let's just touch on national health care, there was that famous moment in time where the sexual intellectuals running the country, let's just say Barack and Joe, the vice president at the time, were getting ready to do a big press conference, or no, big press announcement about Obamacare. And the reason it got named that was because of the way the people reacted to it. But when Obama came up,
Which people reacted to it?
the people that
Oh,
wanted
that
it.
would be the right wing people reacted. No,
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 it
no,
wasn't
no,
a
no,
left
no,
wing
no,
idea to
no,
call
no.
it Obamacare.
No, it
That
was
was like a branding
Scott.
thing. That was a
Scott.
branding thing.
It was
What?
half baked. And when
It was
Barack,
as big
okay,
as the insurance industry would let them bake it,
so when
right?
Barack came to the stage and Biden not recognizing, and imagine Joe Biden not recognizing something, and came to the stage and shook his hand, he said, "We fucked them." That the world got to hear.
Now,
That the world got to hear.
who was the them? I mean, again, it's like,
The
was
people
it
that,
them?
no, it's the people that had hopes.
You know, and that is part and parcel of politics.
Yes, absolutely.
At the end of the day, politics is serving a very narrow group of people of whom we are not them.
Well,
And so when we hear their messaging, when we listen to their commercials, when we listen to their spin on stuff, and we start believing this is the change, this is the way, this is the better path, this is what I believe in, here's $50. We're the Chicago Cubs fans all over again.
yeah, I believe you're right.
And it's going to get crushed. And it's going to get crushed.
And most of the people that are up for election get up in the morning and check which way the wind's blowing,
Oh, absolutely.
because all that really matters is for them to retain their power or their influence at any cost. And it's always been
Yes.
that. I do believe it's always been that way.
It's just more informed and more I mean, they've developed better tools to kind of help keep them in that spot.
Well, I think we've taught them. They're going, well, what did you expect?
Right?
you
Right.
know,
Speaking of this, Justin, I was kind of thinking we should replace ourselves with AI likenesses of ourselves, maybe like Max Headroom from the Cinemax days way back when, and have that AI respond with the most popular response to get us the highest ratings. So basically, program the AI to say exactly the right thing that everybody listening is just like, "Whoa, this is so cool! I'm gonna tell all my friends."
that's a great concept, Scott. I think it would frighten both of us.
The sad thing would be it's like we'd listen to the first show and say, I wasn't going to say that. So
No.
we wouldn't be patting ourselves on the back going, yeah, see, I told you I basically had this sorted out.
Well, yeah, we'd have these two apps. Well, what Scott meant to say was,
Weather. How about weather? I hope it cools off fairly soon. We are like in the beginning of fall and it's the end of summer here. Or I hope the hurricane goes somewhere else, or I hope it doesn't snow, or we get tied up in a lot of wishful thinking, crushed hope, regularity, thinking that the weather somehow is going to conform to what we want it to do.
what? Okay, I believe there's people that do that, and I believe it impacts certain industries like agriculture industries and stuff like that. But I won't believe for a minute that you lose any sleep on the weather.
Well, no, I wouldn't even be doing this show if I lost sleep on stuff like that. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I'd be running away from this show as fast as I could. Um, no, so everything I'm bringing up is something that I don't have a blind spot to, which means there are probably things that I do have blind spots to. Just like, and that's kind of the trick to this show is where are our blind spots? because yeah, I'm a fatalist. The weather is the weather. The weather's going to do the weather. I'm actually kind of a fatalist with politics and religion and even sports. It's whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and nothing that I wish for, nothing that I hope for, nothing that I even invest in necessarily is going to tilt those scales. Is going to tilt fate in my favor.
That's true. That's exactly true. You may let's separate politics into micro politics, like your local school board and things like that. But on the big scheme of things, there's just not enough information for any of us to understand what they are devising.
Let alone accurate information, because
Oh yeah, absolutely.
what's being devised and what we're being told can go lots of different directions.
Yeah, and for a long time they believed that the populace is stupid, and they dumb it down for us.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's a lot about branding, right?
Yes.
I was as the public information officer for a major county organization. A lot of what I was doing in terms of the messaging was getting out stuff that connected people to what we were doing in positive ways, right?
Yes.
Not like raining on the parade or whatever. Hey, I got one. I think I got one. I have a few pets,
Hmm.
and I continue to bring pets into my life, knowing that my hopes of a forever loving relationship are going to be crushed. I know the minute I bring an animal into my life, the minute the animal says, okay, you're going to feed me and take care of me and do whatever, I know that with all probability, I mean, I'm getting older now, that I'm going to be burying that thing. And it's going to break my heart. It's going to crush me. And I still do it. And I still keep lining up and doing it over and over.
Well, I don't know. There again, you're not living in the moment. You're not accepting the blessing of being loved by that animal and that animal being in your life at that time.
Maybe
Because,
in a way, maybe that's what I'm doing, because I'm not crying the tears before it happens.
well, that's good. My favorite pet was shot by a senile neighbor, and we almost lost him. But we did everything we could to save his life, and now he enriches us with being around. He put in the energy to survive. So all we did in going through those motions is I don't think we were in the moment. I mean, we dealt with it as the situation was upon us, and I think, oh yeah, I would have been not only angry because he was innocent and had been shot by a human being, but uh, that I would have missed his persona because it had impacted me positively.
Oh yeah, yeah. But inevitably, that's going to happen, presuming that we live,
Well,
right?
exactly. He
Inevitably, at some point, animals going to die.
or we'll die and leave the pet behind, and we all know of those situations too.
Those are the tough ones where somebody's got like three or four animals in their house, and they pass, and all of a sudden, and these are senior animals set in their ways, and all of a sudden, the world is scrambling to find homes for these guys, and those are tough. That's why I take my vitamins, because I want to outlive the animals.
Well, you better quit acquiring kittens. There's going to come a time you just can't acquire another kitten.
So 3 years ago, that was where the line got drawn, and then one showed up on somebody's porch this year, and the mama didn't want him back, and so there is a kitten now,
Yeah.
and I'm trying desperately to get. I'm taking it to Buckland Park every afternoon, going, please take this thing.
Okay, Scott. Okay.
He's a
Well,
cutie pie. So I got one. How about a lot of people walk around? It seems like they've put their hopes on that they're never going to die. it seems like they're living their life under the kind of delusion that this is just going to go on forever. They're still accumulating things. They're still doing this. They've got bucket lists. They've got that. They're really plugging along like there's no inevitable period on the end of their sentence.
Well, let's give them credit. They're living in the moment. But I think they need to do some soul searching because I hate to tell our audience this, but we're all going to go one of these days.
Oh, indeed we are. That's kind of inevitable. So where does this willingness and I would say love, I would say there's something inside of most, if not all of us as humans, that has an affinity, an attraction for hopping on board the crushed hope train and bandwagoning that bad boy. And again, we do it in lots of different ways. We talked, about several different ways. There are probably 100 more. What attracts us to that?
Well, I think a lot of it is in our DNA. Most of us love the underdog, and I think there's always been underdogs. But you think back to the Revolutionary War. Here was a group of underdogs that were out there risking and dying for our futures. We were inundated with that information as we were growing up, and we most of us learned to respect what they went through, and maybe that gave us a proclivity for rooting for the underdog.
That was one of the things I wrote down when I was trying to sort my way through this, was maybe we were trained as kids.
Yeah.
And now that you're mentioning it that way, the American Revolution was for us a heroic process, and there were heroic people that made a lot of difference and made that happen. But
Well,
then I think about almost every story that I got as a kid had some heroic element to it.
well, absolutely. The little engine that could. We were brought up that way, and I think it meant a lot to us when we were children, and I think we've carried some of that on.
So I wonder if it was inadvertent, if that was just the narrative of somebody facing huge odds and somehow overcoming that, even though reality is 99.9% of the time. I'm not going to do the labors of Hercules.
Well, right, right, but
Not even the first one.
well, it's like the Bible, which had a bearing on a lot of people. David and Goliath. Oh, what a story!
Right?
What a
Right?
story!
Yeah.
And and I wasn't a hockey fan, and a lot of people weren't hockey fans. But when the Miracle on Ice happened, everybody was a hockey fan.
Right, and because there was zero chance of that ever coming true, and anybody who'd ever rooted for USA hockey in international competitions was basically used to being slapped up and sat down.
Right.
It was that bad that we would get blown out. There were so many other international teams that had long histories of excellence. So that miracle year was just amazing, and probably did a lot to get us to buy into longer odds and miracle possibilities. Maybe that's it. Maybe the fact that a miracle can happen in any of these areas, and we can go back and say, look, there was zero probability of this happening, and it happened. So you can hop aboard that long odd train, and even if your hopes get crushed, you know that even if there was zero chance, you know that there was a piece of a chance.
You know,
Detroit Tigers going in the playoffs. October or August 11th, they were 8 games below 500. They had a 0.2%, which is 0.002, chance of getting in the playoffs. They got in the playoffs. It was the only other team that's ever done that was the Miracle Mets of 73.
I almost wonder if there's something deep in our subconscious that we're not in touch with, that we consider ourselves underdogs in some aspect of life. And maybe that's why we embrace it externally.
And so and that would speak to resilience, basically. So even if I get crushed, if I keep getting up, if I keep going, eventually one of these days those odds are going to pay off. All I have to do is stay determined.
Well, I think for a lot of us, some people find comfort in giving up, and people find comfort in continuing on. That resilience, that, carry the fight, and we're just all so different. We're all wired so different. It's, a lot of people that need help, it's important that they get the right help from somebody that understands what they need, as opposed to this will help all.
Yeah, that's a good point. That it's not universal, and I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people that is not anti-surrender. It's like I think that surrender can sometimes be the wiser choice
Oh,
and the
sure.
more graceful choice, and so I'm not like keep going at all costs. You know.
Well, yeah, but there again, that's upbringing. When I heard "damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead," that became part of my
Mhm.
persona.
Oh, we
Uh,
we got that drilled into us as kids.
yeah, that became part of my. It was a comfort in that persona. That persona was easy for me. Surrender would be really hard. Now that I've gotten older, admitting that I was wrong is not hard anymore because I recognize how many times I've been wrong in my lifetime.
I would say that as well. A lot of my maturity has been around learning to have a better relationship to surrender and being able to accept the things I cannot change. It's, the courage to change the things you can change, the wisdom to accept the things you cannot change. A lot of what my work personally has been, okay, let's sharpen the wisdom up. Let's not keep beating our head against the wall over something that isn't really going to ever switch.
Well, and I think part of our greatest commonality that we both share is we work on our wisdom all the time. I mean, we're just sponges when it comes to absorbing information. We may not absorb it the same, we may not utilize it the same, but we both have a passion for absorbing that information.
One of the guys when we were having the pre-production meeting at the dog park, one of the guys leaned to me and says, "You know, I think what your thing is that you think too much, and you need to spend more time feeling." And I was like, well, that's awfully nice of you to make that judgment on me, but let me be fair. I think so much that I don't trust thinking. I
Right.
inherently have doubt about what my thinking has sorted out, or other people, even experts, what their thinking has sorted out, because I know thinking's kind of a trap. And it's useful for some things. It's like, it's like a good pair of pliers in your toolbox. If you're trying to get a nut unloosened, if you're trying to hammer something, pliers work, but they're not as good. If you're trying to like do electrical work, there's electrical pliers, but lots of times pliers aren't the best tool, and thinking is the same way.
Well, absolutely, and there's certainly things that will alter your mind that will certainly modify your ability to think and your thinking processes.
I've done really good work on the because I worked in recovery for a long time. I've done really good work on the myth of sobriety. So people like to think that, well, I didn't take any drugs today, so I'm sober. And like, you just had a soda pop with 32 grams of sugar. You're a different person now. You know,
That's
you
true.
we're always we're all, you're petting a cat. You're a different person now. And I think part of our maturity and sobriety is recognizing that there is no ground state, exactly zero ground state. Or if there is, it takes a lot of work and you only stay there for a second or two. Instead, we're always bouncing around. We've got random thoughts popping up, we've got random feelings, we're reacting to stuff. It's hot today, there was a lot of traffic. Whatever that stimulus that happening in the world is happening, it's impacting everything, our physiology, our neurons, everything. And I think that's important to recognize. You don't just get high on drugs.
Right.
You get high on it and on lots of things, and some things can lay you low.
Well, there's
And
even
if you live in the moment with Justin, you're gonna be able to moderate that because the moment can only carry so much energy because the next one's right here.
absolutely, and that's what makes life interesting. We don't know what tomorrow or an hour from now brings to us, and I guess I've learned to celebrate that. Looking forward to what it's going to happen. If I'm going to get crushed in this relationship, okay, we'll see how I
Right?
do.
I mean, something was going to happen, and it happened, and and if I'd hoped it was going to be a different way, it was just a lesson to me on how to manage my hope.
With my critical illnesses, the doctors always marveled at what a great patient I was because I took that role and I'm going to be the best patient I can. I'm going to try and implement all these suggestions that they have. And I didn't
Put the
dread it.
doctor in the position to be successful.
Well, yeah, and I didn't, and I did, had no expectations whether I was going to live or die, and that didn't matter. I just stayed after what I was supposed to be doing, and they marveled at that. They put me on suicide watches. I had no intent to commit suicide. I wouldn't give others the satisfaction that I ended
The
my own life.
satisfaction of checking you off the list.
Right, exactly. So, and that's what makes human beings so fascinating. We're all so many influences on us that are all different, our upbringings, all these things, our environment, our need for recreational drugs, our need for alcohol, our need to smoke. It just all works so different on all of us.
The cool thing about sobriety and about those kind of the substances is that civilizations developed a whole bunch of alternative ways to change your state of consciousness in the moment, that don't involve substances. So you can go online shopping now. You can doom scroll on social media. You can watch cheap ratings based informational news programs. And all these things will yank you around in all sorts of different directions, just like drugs will, just like substances will.
Well, like,
And
it's like sadomasochistic behavior. There's people that enjoy that, and that's a drug to them. Or people that have cutting, that they cut themselves. That's an endorphin release for some, and a lot of us can't relate to it. But people
no,
like
indeed,
you
that's true.
had to try and help them or assist them through it.
And listeners, stay tuned. Next week, Justin is going to share his safe word with us. Don't miss that episode. Don't miss it.
Yeah,
Once we know Justin's safe word, we're in.
I'm going to give it to you now. It would probably be, don't even think about it.
There you go. Sometimes I get like this bloodlust passion thing, and I may not hear you. So just be advised.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's the idea that people enjoy having pain induced upon them. There's enough pain in this world. It's just something I can't relate to, but I did offer back in the day, if you're a real masochist and you like to pay people to hurt you, come to me. I can give you that experience in 2 or 3 seconds.
And I'll give you a discount. I'll charge you by the minute.
But, it's that old saying, different strokes for different folks. And, and as we get older, I think we get in touch with ourselves, with others a little bit better. And I don't think we can ever get a handle on it. I mean, if you read the great psychiatrists in history, Freud and all these other ones, they can't agree with each other. It's not a known science, but they were all theoretical doctors that were trying to do some good.
They're trying to make sense of stuff, which is what humans do. I mean, we're basically makers at heart, right? We make buildings, we make cars, and we try to make sense of our condition. And that's sometimes maybe we should just pet the dog or the cat, and that would be enough. But it's interesting. How many of us, we're talking about crushed hopes. How many of us are hoping for levels of nirvana, sexual gratification, enlightenment, happiness? Happiness is a big one. Is there any reality in the fact that I want to be happy all the time? That's going to be a crushed hope.
Yeah, that would be.
What comes up must go down. Inhale, exhale.
Well, I agree, but there again, that's another feeling. So
That we may tie expectations to, and that's kind of the trick to that is how many horses are you going to hook up to that happiness train, and then how are you going to take it when inevitably you've got to pull over or the road got washed out or something happens, and your eternal maximized happiness thing is not happening for you.
well, and that comes back around. Some lines in the sand are not worth drawing. Some battles are not worth the fight, and happiness. I wish that would be the magic elixir. It's not curing cancer. It's allowing the vast majority of people on this planet to find happiness and retain as much of it as possible.
Yeah, I would say that again, but that may be a crushed hope. I mean,
Yes.
you got somewhere between 20 and $50,000 people a day starving to death. They're probably not happy, nor their moms are probably not happy. And so the idea that we're going to get some sort of world peace, universal happiness thing, that seems like a whack-a-mole. The
Yeah.
minute I get this piece of the board happy, that piece of the board fell apart and is suffering, and is not happy about suffering. As you said, some people do like suffering.
Yes.
So I think that's another good example of our human tendency to really want to invest in these not very realistic chances of getting out, and then somehow feel good. And maybe the person's justified when there's no world peace, or there's no universal happiness, or there's no personal happiness. Maybe there's a justification in there. Maybe I can blame like just in case, or the weather, or the whoever knocked the Cubs out of the playoffs, and that gives me something to focus energy on and justify and work through, and that becomes the kind of hidden reinforcement, the prize at the end of this getting your hopes crushed.
Well, I can't imagine Luna has her hopes crushed very often.
No, well, that isn't that the cool thing about animals, the domesticated ones that hung around with us. It's almost like they're living examples of how to get out of your head, and how not to worry about inconsequential things as humans that like we tend to worry about. Yeah, the cat's like, that is a non-issue. Why
Right.
are you tied up in that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And what else did you get from the dog park other than them coming to the realization that you think too much, and that he didn't mention me in that conversation.
No, well, and I should have linked him to the podcast so that he could have more people to throw under that bus. It was interesting because everybody's willing to acknowledge that this is a fairly common human tendency, and then you turn it a little bit and say, okay, so personally, how does it affect you? And they're like, well, my prayers are answered, my sports teams win, the weather doesn't bother me, and so they in almost to a person, they deferred and moved away from how this may that, and that's why I thought, this is a show, because whenever you run into something that people kind of like can see in other people, but they don't want to like grab hold of in themselves where that might be expressing itself, that's a show. Because ultimately the goal here is to say, it's just to get the seed of doubt. Maybe there's some things that I buy into. I know one of the things that we played around a little bit with was happiness itself. Like the person's life goal, the person's hope is to be consistently happy most or all of the time. And we talked about that. Like, is that really realistic, or is that really desirable? To be honest.
Well, it can certainly jump into delusion, and there needs to be a healthy balance in all of this for us to be our best selves. Is that a word, best selves?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So yeah, I tend to be happy because that's an easier path. It keeps me from being aggravated. It keeps my mind moving forward, which is important to me. A lot of people, it's not. A lot of people want to retain the same old, same old. They've eaten the same breakfast for 20 years.
They want to keep chewing on the bone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean that they're not doing the right thing for them.
One of my friends brought up wanting Starbucks prices to go down,
Okay.
and we had a little laugh over it. Well, that's going to be a crushed hope, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But he can buy that coffee in the grocery store and make it himself, but it's not the
Yeah,
same.
that's kind of me too. It's like, yeah, why would I pay $5 for something that cost me a quarter at home? I grew up too poor. I can't get my head around stuff like that.
Well, it's just I had to have meetings with people at Starbucks, and if you're, let's say, a virgin to Starbucks, and you walk in and try and order a regular coffee, which is a concept, black coffee, it's
Right?
like
Yeah.
it's like you've crushed all of their hopes.
I was that guy. Not only was I, because my former boss's boss would haul me into Starbucks every week for our meetings, and I was not. I had tapered my coffee drinking, and so I would go in there and get a tall blonde with cream and laugh at how that sounded kind of suggestive, and and then sit there and pound that light roast coffee. I was so wasted by the time I left there. I was just like a bird on a wire, baby. I was like singing.
Well, I was protected because no matter how I pretend to be or come across, Peggy Lee's song "Is That All There Is" is still my favorite go-to song, and Starbucks certainly fell into that category.
Nice. Yeah, indeed. It's like you can get lots of caffeine and lots of sugar. Okay, on to the next story.
Well, and if you're concerned that you're pretentious, go there because almost everybody around you will be more pretentious than you.
That's true. And well, and to me, waiting in line is not pretentious.
No, it's insanity.
It's herd behavior.
Yeah. What else? Anything else other than Starbucks and you think too much from the dog park?
Those were the big ones. Ultimately, again, this was a hard topic, and people kind of really tried to deflect how it would go into their own personal milieu. So they would say, well, I see how other people are doing this, and like I see how people do this with religion, or I see how people do this with this or that or the other thing. So we had a good discussion about happiness. We had a good discussion about, well, you think too much, and we had a good discussion about Starbucks. But again, and that was the tip off,
Yeah.
because it was like people were deflecting away from it a little bit, and the minute they started doing that, I was like, oh, this is good, because this may be, So let's say we have 10 listeners, which I know it's a big estimate. But let's say we have 10, then 8 of them are going to say, well, yeah, this is cool, but I don't do that. But those two, but those two, those are the two that you want to be like, oh, okay. And then they're sitting there going, yeah, why am I investing the time and energy on hopes that I know are going to be crushed? And why do I kind of like that? And I think that starts the train. I think then you're able to kind of, heaven forbid, think about it and see how you feel about it, and then decide if you're okay with where you're at, or whether you want to live in the moment.
Well, yeah, the idea that most of them were deflecting is they didn't feel comfortable in addressing it. Not that they weren't comfortable in talking about it, they just didn't want to address it with themselves, which is interesting.
Yes. Yeah, which is interesting. Exactly. So if you expect the moment to be fairly neutral and to have limited uh, disaster potential or because it's just a moment, does are your hopes ever crushed? Like, do you ever turn around and say to the moment that just went by, moment, I expected a lot more out of you. What the hell was that?
Well, no, I protect myself, and maybe it's just laziness, but not having that expectation. You know, that's why I could never live in Hurricane Alley because I'd have to stare at that thing coming at me for a week. Think of the
We did that.
anxiety.
We did that as kids with tornadoes. That was the sport. It's like, oh, there's a tornado warning. Let's go to the southeast corner because that we know that's where it's coming from, and
Well,
everybody get your eyes open.
well, that's kind of we growing up in Omaha and which was right in the middle of it.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
We listened for them. So they had sirens back then, but we didn't like
Yes.
them because we couldn't hear if the tornado was coming.
No. That earthquake train sound is reproduced pretty nicely in a tornado.
Well, yeah, and that even though we're in Earthquake Alley, the big ones are spread out quite a bit. So when the big one is coming and we hear it coming, our brain takes a few seconds to recognize what that noise is, and
Yeah.
and then we know.
I get my hopes crushed here in the desert because we used to have monsoon seasons. And every time there was a cloud, I came from a fairly precipitation based place. And so I got out here, and every time there was a cloud, I was like, it's going to rain. It's going to rain. Come on. We got this. It's going to rain. And talk about a hope crusher. That was actually a reality check thing, right? It's like, how many times am I going to invest hope that it's going to rain in the desert where it only rains 3 inches a year on a good year? And I think that helped me mature. I think that helped me to get past to recognize I'm investing a lot of like emotional hope in an outcome that I A can't control. B is ain't gonna happen. Mm-mm.
Yeah, people that don't live here don't recognize that we can see huge thunderstorms heading our way, and once they enter our valley, they just evaporate. They just they're gone.
It is horrific if you were really counting on that storm to like wash your soul. It's like it is just again it is hope crushing. It literally you sit there watching something stomp on your hopes.
Well, it's like in the dead of summer here, we can walk outside and see a cloud in the sky, and it's like, oh look, a cloud.
Is it gonna grow up and be a thunderhead?
No.
And no, not any and not anymore. I mean, monsoon season is kind of a thing of the past.
Well, it kind of shifted. Growing up in Phoenix, it shifted further to the east.
Yes,
And if
exactly.
you live on that Arizona New Mexico border, there's some serious rain that shoots up that border all the time, and that's where monsoon decided to leave, and it will come back. I'm sure that the planet will adjust, and it'll next time around it may come up through San Diego with all the energy of the sea and the ocean, and and that's what makes weather interesting.
It is the variability and the fact that it is always responding to the context of which the Earth's climate is. That you're right about that. And if any of our sponsors are have large castles that they're willing to give away in the New Mexico Arizona border area, we are more than happy to do the paperwork. Beautiful country. I get
It
every time
is.
I drive through there, I am. We would say in Spanish, boca abierta, open mouth
Well,
with the raw beauty.
well, and that's where the Badlands were, and parts of it, and all the way up north through that Arizona New Mexico border.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
it is remarkable, and the people there are some of the most unique people you'll meet in your lives, and because they live in their own paradise.
Yes, yes, they and some of them were actually moved there because it wasn't good for raising crops. It wasn't good for this or that or the other thing. But in New Mexico, you've got thousands of years of indigenous peoples and then hundreds of years of Spanish people who moved there, originally when the Spanish colonizers came in a gazillion years ago and had these little enclaves of Spanish culture that persists to this day.
Father Kino, he was there.
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
Well, I don't know if we've accomplished much other than having a very interesting conversation, but there's got to be things we can.
All right, let's talk about that. So this is your takeaway today. Your takeaway is either you've sat here and listened and heard some examples of elements that may or may not be a part of you. Like, oh yeah, I'm a Cubs fan. Oh yeah, I pray for Mercedes Benz and a night on the town. Um, or not. And then to kind of consider, well, okay, if this is pretty common human behavior, and as we kind of reviewed, it's really the heroic ideal is something that is really pushed over on us a lot because it's so interesting. It sells itself. Then in all likelihood, we're doing something somewhere. In some way, we are investing love and caring and other energies on hope crushing defeats.
No, no,
And
no.
we're feeling good about it. And that's the coolest thing about this is it feeds us somehow.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
it justifies us. And so that's the takeaway today. The takeaway is if that is indeed true, how does it affect me? How have I been touched by this tendency? And then once I've kind of sorted that out, how do I feel about that? Do I want to, switch to the Yankees or?
But isn't, and you would know this better than me, but hope, love, that's all endorphin producing emotions, right?
Yeah. It's all especially when it first hits us. It's kind of like the intoxication of infatuation,
Right,
right? It's like a crush.
right.
I have a
That's a
crush. I have a crush on my hopes being fulfilled.
well, no,
And,
that's a good place to be.
and what happens to crushes? Why do they call them crushes? Because they get crushed.
Oh, geez, no. I can still celebrate the crushes I had on girls in grade school today.
I, I'm Jimmy Carter. I still get crushes on people, and it can be their intellect, it can be their sensitivity, it can be the way they move. I'm a grown up enough that I don't start, like running after them and sleeping on their porch or stalking them. But I can still experience crushes. I'm
Right,
like, this is so cool. This is such a magical human expression. I
right.
want to be witness to. I want to
Well,
check it out.
and that's a perfect moment. Your endorphins are going crazy, and that's a good place to be. So people should celebrate. So if from a relationship you're crushed, you should celebrate that there's something else is going to come around.
Without investing that I'm going to be at this person's side every day the rest of my life, and they're going to magically make me happy, and I'm going to magically make them. That's where you get into, well, that's probably not going to work at the end. Don't get too invested.
Okay, stop.
Reality's going to step up and rear its ugly head.
It's
And if you're over invested in that thing, your hopes are going to get crushed, and you're going to love it because you're going to be able to walk around and tell the next prospect, the next crush, this person was really evil. I loved them with all my heart, and they just stomped on me. And maybe that'll sell the next crush. They'll be a sympathetic person, and they'll be like, you know what? This person really deserves my love because the world's treated them so badly. So
well,
once a player, always a player.
you're preying on those emotions that life insurance salespeople and morticians use to sell caskets and cemetery plots.
Because it's commercial consumerism is a psyop.
Yeah,
They know our weaknesses, they know our tendencies, and they know our blind spots. and they're really good at pushing those in order to get us, compel us to hop on board and do whatever their goal is for us. Absolutely. So if you don't buy the next thing that you see on TV because you heard the show, then we're going to consider that a victory.
No, I agree with you, Scott. And if you feel remiss that you didn't get it bought, hang in there because it'll come back around.
And those sleeveless T-shirts I bought because I'm hanging out at the dog park and I wanted to get my shoulders a little bit more tan. They're beautiful. They're very cool. They're too short in the waist and my belly hangs out. My hopes have been crushed.
Well, everything's a give and take. You know that.
For sure.
And did you make that decision on your own, or did you ask your wife for some assistance?
You know what? It's the Facebook ads. They come so fast, so furious that I don't have time to really discuss these out at the kind of family level. I just got to roll. Just got to roll right over to PayPal. Click, click, click. It's going to come in the mail.
All right, everybody, and all right, dog park people. We understand when you don't want to play, but maybe that was a good decision that they made.
Oh, absolutely. I totally respect their opinions and their input, even when their input is avoidance. Their input is extraordinarily valuable. So
it is.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, my friend. Okay, everybody, this has been Justin Case and Scott bringing you American Consciousness. Thanks for joining us. Remember, additional information and links provided in this video is read more. Today's the day to subscribe to this channel. Please learn more about Scott when time permits.